Good afternoon, everybody. It is an enormous pleasure to welcome all of you 1st July of 2020, at the beginning of the Polish presidency in the V4, Visegrad 4 cooperation. And we have our special guest today, Professor Jacek Czaputowicz, Minister of Foreign Affairs of Poland. Poland takes over today its presidency in V4. So now we'll have a great, absolutely great opportunity to listen to the Minister, the Chairman of V4 for the next 6 months. And learn more about both the international context in which we operate and the priorities of the Polish presidency. Before we start, I would like to welcome all our partners in crime, because this meeting is organized under the umbrella of Think Visegrad platform. A very special intellectual support for respecting ministers of foreign affairs of V4 countries. Established 9 years ago, and there is a group of 8 institutions which create a core group of Think Visegrad platform. Center for Euro-Atlantic Integration and Democracy from Budapest, Center for Eastern Studies, Warsaw, Europeum Institute for European Policy, Prague, Globsec Policy Institute, Bratislava, Institute for Foreign Affairs and Trade, Budapest, Institute for International Relations, Prague, the Polish Institute of International Affairs, Warsaw, Research Center for Slovak Foreign Policy Association, Bratislava. I would like to welcome all representatives of this core group. Good afternoon. Thank you for finding time to be with us. And we will have a great discussion, I believe, with the Polish Minister of Foreign Affairs. There are also V4 watchers, those outside of the core group, and they could follow us on live on YouTube channel. And they could also follow discussions. However, the only privileged group in this setting are the members of Think Visegrad Consortium, experts which regularly write reports, recommendations for respecting Ministry of Foreign Affairs. Without further delay, after this technical announcement, Minister, could you share with us your vision of V4? As it is for today, your priorities, and how we are going to achieve these goals. And this will open our settings for discussion. Minister, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Director, for giving me an opportunity to exchange opinions with an expert working on Central Europe and Visegrad countries' policies, and this is a special day for us, the day when we assume presidency in the Visegrad Group. Let me remind you that the Visegrad Declaration was signed almost 30 years ago in 1991, which initiated the cooperation, closer cooperation in Central Europe. It also marked a significant step for the countries towards regaining the rightful place in Europe. Looking forward to the Visegrad Group's 30th anniversary, we can confidently say that the V4 has become one of the most recognized regional groupings, not only in Central Europe, but generally in Europe. During the period of our EU membership efforts, it was a valuable forum for cooperation and coordination, and after 2004 it evolved into an instrument for developing and consolidating the positions of the region's countries on key issues on the European agenda. With the V4, our countries in a relatively short period of time have reached a high degree of empowerment in European politics, becoming co-founders and co-owners of the European project. The combined potential, we always use that argument, it's a good argument, but the potential of the Czech Republic, Slovakia, Hungary and Poland can influence the dynamics and substance of EU debate. In the Council of the European Union, we have a similar number of votes as Germany or as France. This means that we can build wider alliances. Today, every European politician knows that no decision about Central and Eastern Europe can be made in the EU without our participation. This reflects Poland's solidarity slogan, "Nothing about us without us," and fulfills it at the European level. We all know that in recent years, excluding the pandemic, the V4 countries were among the most dynamically growing economies in the European Union, significantly contributing to the prosperity of the European Union as a whole. That is what is more, if we were not for the highly dynamic development of the Visegrad Group, the rest of the EU would likely display a negative economic growth. This makes the V4 well positioned for the discussion of the new EU financial perspective and economic recovery plans, which should be driven by the full exploitation of the potential of the common market, in particular in the services sector, and by the creation of the digital market. We have developed a V4 permanent consultation mechanism on the current EU agenda. Positions are agreed on a regular basis prior to General Council meetings. And meetings between the prime ministers ahead of the European Council are the rule. The meetings at which the decisions are taken and positions are consulted. The V4 also plays a role as a promoter of European enlargement policy. It is strongly involved in the Eastern Partnership and is an advocate of the Western Balkans. Defense cooperation is being developed. V4 combat groups operate in the framework of the EU Common Security and Defense Policy. Also, the International Visegrad Fund supports projects in the areas of cross-border, cultural, educational cooperation, and in youth exchanges. It supports research cooperation and finances also the Think Visegrad platform. The Visegrad Patent Institute has also been established. The Visegrad Group has not kept itself confined to the former institutional framework. It has stayed light and flexible so that it can adapt easily to current challenges and threats. Instead of being a costly and bloated administrative structure, the rotating presidency of each country ensures the format's effective functioning. Ladies and gentlemen, the COVID-19 pandemic has brought crisis to a number of the dimensions. We well know that, and it is discussed globally. Shaped in line with the rules of globalization, the world's economic system has shown its weaknesses. There have been voices calling into question the essence of multilateralism. The coronavirus and its aftermath could become a catalyst for many changes in the international system. Now we have to simply think what and how deep ramifications of that crisis for the international system will be. The history of other pandemics shows that the first wave might be followed by next ones. Such a prospect increases the sense of uncertainty and at the same time the yearning for a predictable and secure world. Back on track, the Polish presidency's slogan deliberately refers to this. It is not only about economic recovery, this coming back on track, or a simple return to pre-pandemic projects and activities. It is about restoring mutual trust and effective solidarity in face of unprecedented challenges, and at the same time about rethinking Central Europe or our values and aspirations, which are in line with the new conditions. Today, Poland is taking over the V4 leadership from the Czech Republic. This is the 6th time already. However, routine is out of the question, as each time we find ourselves in different conditions. As has been the case so far, the EU agenda will feature predominantly in Poland's V4 presidency. At the same time, we would like to give a renewed impetus to relations between the V4 group member states, between our 4 countries. We will implement all actions and initiatives on the basis of 3 main pillars, which is the economy and connectivity, security and society. We have set our 4 key goals for the presidency. Let me go through these goals. The first goal is a strong Visegrad Group in a strong Europe. In this area, we will be working towards an effective coordination of V4's activities in the EU. We will also safeguard the greatest benefits of the European integration, in particular the Schengen area and the common market with its 4 freedoms, all 4 freedoms. It is especially important for the services market, which has been particularly affected by the restrictions introduced after the pandemic outbreak. We also see a strong Europe as a continent which needs to strengthen competitiveness through digitalization, innovation, cutting red tape, improving security, as well as reindustrialization. The second goal is to return to the new normal, so to say, after the COVID-19 pandemic. Poland's presidency, the V4, will focus on countering the effects of the pandemic. While the forecasts of the recession's severity vary for individual countries, according to the European Commission, the V4 countries will see a drop of 4 to 7% in their GDP in 2020. It is certain that all economies will be badly hit in exports. So European and global demand for industrial goods has plummeted, while prospects for recovery are unclear. The services sector, in particular passenger transport, hotel industry, catering, tourism, and recreation will be heavily affected. We hope to receive additional growth impulse from the EU funds for rebuilding the economy. Moving manufacturing from distant countries to Europe, including to Central and Eastern Europe, can offer an opportunity to our countries. The third goal is people-to-people contacts, as well as integration and cohesion efforts within the V4. We understand this goal as coordination in the field of broadly understood connectivity, which serve to increase the region's synergy. In the economic dimension, it means infrastructural links in the area of transport and energy. We hope to see progress in the development of railway network connected Warsaw, Brno, Bratislava, and Budapest. We also look forward to the acceleration of works on the Baltic-Adriatic Road Corridor, the Via Carpathia Expressway, and the Danube-Oder-Elbe waterway. The rapid spread of the pandemic required a speedy response from each country, including imposing movement restriction, Closed borders affected people-to-people relations and joint projects. That is why, during our presidency, we want to facilitate contacts between our societies in the sphere of culture, education, and youth cooperation. We also want to rebuild cross-border initiatives and contacts. COVID-19 is an experience the V4 countries and more broadly the whole Schengen area have to take into account in the future. Yes, to make it clearly, it was also a negative experience. Closing border was unexpected and created some difficulties for our citizens to travel and maybe sometimes to continue their work, and we have to take into account that. And finally, the fourth goal is cooperation in the field of digital affairs and innovation. Through this goal, we want to put the V4 at the forefront of innovation. By working together, we stand a better chance at successfully competing on a global arena in the field of technological progress. We want to tap into the V4's potential in sectors such as smart healthcare and low-carbon industry. We hope to forge closer cooperation in the area of scientific research and technological development in the spirit of strategic alliance based on the 2017 V4 Declaration on Mutual Cooperation in Innovation and Digital Affairs. We see a need to develop digital infrastructure, including safe 5G, and in the field of robotics, artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, and data management. Dear experts, we also share a vision of the European Union, similar vision, the same vision. It was expressed in the 2019 Warsaw Declaration by the prime ministers of countries which joined the EU after 2004. A Europe whose strength comes from the cooperation of sovereign countries, supported by common institutions. We want an EU where it is the European Council, that is member states, which take the most important political decision. It is also an EU whose institutions treat all the members equally, acting based on treaties and in respect of the principle of subsidiarity, and not a union of many speeds. It is an EU that is capable of assuming greater responsibility for its own security in the cooperation with NATO and with the United States. It is a vision which corresponds with the aspirations and needs of the Europeans with it. So my point here is that our common vision we share by all four countries is good for all Europe, not only Central Europe, and for all European citizens. During our V4 presidency, we will represent the region's position in key European debates on Brexit, the multi-annual financial framework, and the Recovery Fund. After the publication of the European Green Deal, it will be in our interest that it receives funds which will allow us to adapt to the requirements of the zero-emission economy, while taking into consideration different starting points of member states. We also need to better manage the increasingly limited water resources in our region. It is necessary to keep our agriculture competitive. The Visegrad Group will remain an active participant of the discussion on migration and visa policies. We call for strengthening the protection of the European Union's external borders and flexible response in case of emergency. We support the Western Balkans and remain an advocate of forging closer ties with our neighbors participating in the Eastern Partnership. We support strengthening the 3Cs initiative, a framework which connects the V4, the EU, and the transatlantic cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, the Polish presidency will be officially launched at a summit of prime ministers in Warsaw in 2 days' time, on the 3rd of July, during which Prime Minister Mateusz Morawiecki will present key points on our presidency agenda. Apart from symbolic handover of the V4 presidency by the Czech side, the summit will focus on coordinating positions in areas such as the multi-annual financial framework negotiations and actions to stimulate the European economy. This is the sphere of competence of Prime Minister, the most important positions of states' policies. European economy, and our economy. During the summit, the V4 will adopt a declaration on cybersecurity. The summit will be followed by a meeting of the V4 foreign ministers in Wadowice. Already, we start very early this year, already on the 7th of July, where I will host my counterparts. There we will discuss current affairs of the international agenda. The whole year will be full of meetings on different levels, as it has been a tradition of the format. It is also worth highlighting that during our presidency, the Visegrad Group will mark its 30th anniversary. We hope that nothing foils our plans and that on the 15th of February next year, 2021, we will celebrate this joyful anniversary together. Finally, let me recall an event which concerns you directly. I am referring to the midterm conference, which each year provides a discussion opportunity for experts as part of the Think Visegrad Consortium. I hope that we will be able to organize it in Poland. Even though technology provides even greater possibilities of remote interaction, it will not replace direct contacts, as it is these contacts that strengthen our Visegrad community. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Minister, for this overview of Polish aspirations towards our presidency in V4. Now we have almost 1 hour, 45 minutes for discussions about V4. I encourage my colleagues from other institutions presented during this meeting to prepare their questions. Before I give them the floor, I would like to start our conversation from 2 questions from my side. One of 4 priorities of the Polish presidency, you mentioned, Minister, economy. That recovery from the COVID-19 crisis and its economic consequences would be one of the top areas. Poland would like to focus the activities of the whole group and itself as well. And here is a question. Usually there was the main predominant reaction on COVID crisis was by national states. Each state of the EU and V4 reacted on its own, launching its own anti-COVID-19 strategies and also economic measures to tackle the crisis which followed the pandemic. My question is, how V4 can contribute to economic recovery? How Visegrad Group can coordinate its activities to regain, you mentioned, trust towards economic potential. Can this group, as an international cooperation platform, can contribute to European thinking about economic recovery?
These are the most important questions. How we can so to say, influence the economies, that the recovery process will be fast and successful. I agree that the pandemic proved that a real power concerning the security and safety of people is at the national level. So states reacted, and it was in accordance with treaties. It was the responsibility of states, nation states, we can use this scientific term, that they to provide the security. Reaction was different. So some countries closed their borders, like Poland and V4. It was a good decision, successful good decision, because the level of victims was much lower than in some other countries, Western European countries, and it demonstrates also the quality of government. It was a test. So we, as a group, were successful because we were the leaders did not shy away from imposing strict decisions, closing borders, introducing quarantine and other things. So it was a good decision. Now we have to start to cooperate. At the initial stage, it was a nation state, but now we realized, as ministers and leaders, also experts, that to overcome the crisis, we have to cooperate with other countries. No one state can close itself, so the situation in Poland depends on the situation in our neighbors and vice versa. So the Czech Republic imposed some restrictions on citizens of Silesia, for example, and it is their competence. So there is an understanding, also at the global level. Secretary General, UN Secretary General Guterres says that multilateral approach is necessary in order to fight pandemic, and we agree with that, because the world is interconnected. This closing down the borders, it's not possible on a long run without very serious cost for economy and for societies. So there is a room at that stage of recovery for international institutions, also for the European Union. So Poland supported this recovery fund, substantial financial contribution of the European Union to the states, to the citizens, to the states, in order to overcome that crisis, and this is how it should be. For me, it's difficult to predict long-term also consequences, ramifications of that, because it demonstrates also it will influence of the fiscal policy, and then what will be the consequence for the health of economy of the whole union. We will see. There is a discussion among experts, but again, what are the implications of that kind of argumentation? That we should have strong, ambitious EU budget with the resources to be active in different fields, also in economic fields, recovery fields area, but also in foreign policy, what is important for us. So strong budget. When I discussed the issue with the German foreign minister who visited last week Warsaw before taking over the presidency, they are doing it today. So he also explained the German position. German's role next 6 months will be very important to get an agreement on these pending issues, multi-annual financial framework, Brexit, but also recovery fund. And we support Germany in their efforts to get an agreement on an ambitious budget. It's not simple for him because there are countries who are rather for smaller budget. But the question is, okay, who is more pro-European? The one who is for bigger, substantial budget, a bigger EU role, or for a limited one? A rhetorical question. That means that we are very much pro-European because we are in this first group of countries.
Thank you very much. We have the first first question from our colleagues present during this meeting in various places and 3 other capitals before. Tomasz Strażaj, one of the most active member of Think Visegrad platform, and one of the founders of the platform. Tomasz, the floor is yours. All the screens, rather.
Thank you very much for the floor, and thank you very much for your introductory speech, Mr. Minister. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, that's great. I was very much interested in your assessment of the cooperation of the V4 countries on crucial issues related to the EU agenda. And as you mentioned, Poland's presidency in the V4 starts exactly on the same day as the German presidency in the EU Council. I would really appreciate if you could elaborate a little bit more on how you see the communication of the V4 presidency, Polish V4 presidency, and German presidency in the EU Council. Especially, I'd like to know whether there is any summit or meeting set up, an idea of the meeting summit in the V4 plus Germany framework during the next 6 months. And the second question would be, you mentioned other regional formats in Central Europe, particularly the 3Cs initiative. We know that the position of V4 countries or the enthusiasm of the V4 countries differ a little bit regarding the 3Cs initiative. So I would be interested in your opinion, how you actually see the possibilities to strengthen even more the complementarity of the V4 with the 3Cs initiative in the coming 6 months. Thank you very much.
Concerned. I discussed that issue with the Minister Mas just recently. So before taking over the presidency, Minister obliged himself to meet to come to Warsaw to discuss with Poland, but also as a future member of V4 the pending issue within the European Union. I will refer to my colleagues, foreign ministers, the discussion. And definitely they would welcome any support or opinion of our countries concerning the priorities of the presidency and the decisions which are going to be taken. I think that Prime Minister also will speak on the 3rd of July with his counterparts on these important EU issues to discuss, to present it to the Chancellor Merkel. I think that for Germany it's important period. Thank you for comparing somehow these 2 formats, V4 and European Union. Yes, two presidencies met a little bit, but it is we are within the European Union. I think that Germany has a lot of, so to say, things to arrange. They think how to organize EU-China summit, for example. Other meetings we discussed with Heiko Maas. We will meet in person in Berlin. The Gimnich meeting, which will be important. So we rather plan to organize the meetings of V4 plus Germany, either prime ministers plus Chancellor Merkel or foreign ministers, in the second half of our presidency. The Germany will have more time to prepare and to have better exchange of actions. But of course, all countries have direct contacts with Germans, and we will meet regularly at the European Union level very often. Next week, in 2 weeks' time, we meet in Brussels as the foreign ministers for first time in person. As far as the 3Cs initiative is concerned, developing very well. Yesterday we had a meeting of foreign ministers, countries involved in that initiative. Difficult for me to assess what is the position of different countries within the V4, but you probably is right. There are some more active countries. But let me notice so to say, very positive change or side of the new Hungarian policy. They are very active in 3Cs. They want to be there. They were a bit skeptical maybe earlier, but now they are in and want to organize something within this, and we consulted that issue. These countries joined the 3Cs fund, which is very important. So now the challenge is to supplement this very good political cooperation at the presidential level, which is political because these are political, usually, so to say, positions, presidents in these countries. But now it should be institutionalized through electing a coordinator in governments, and it's being done. Most countries already did it. And also to establish a financial instrument, which is a fund, which can realize projects. So now the cooperation should be more concrete. With the also important influence and support contribution from the US, very important announcement of Secretary of State Pompeo to contribute to the fund or to the financial to the project. European Union, but also Germany. We discussed yesterday, there was a question, what about Ukraine as a maybe partner? I think we can consider that. Pandemic changed a bit of a dynamic of many international formats. One of them affected by that was the 3Cs. The summit was postponed, but it will take place in autumn in Tallinn. And then I think it will regain its momentum and activity.
Thank you very much. Daniel Bartel from Budapest. Daniel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. Let me continue also with a question related to the German presidency and to the fact that Mr. Mas also introduced that one of the priority of the presidency is to introduce the rule of law conditionality into the payments of the EU funds. Is there any common position of the V4, and what do you think, what could be that common position related to this question? Thank you very much.
He did not mention it in Warsaw, so maybe it's a good side. Maybe in Bucharest, but indeed there is a problem if it is a serious, so to say, attempt. I try to also argue with him during that meeting, if I may refer to that meeting. I used an example that recently German Constitutional Tribunal issued a ruling which is broadly criticized by the EU members as going against the European standards, European law, and questioning the superiority of European law over national law. And I asked him the question, is Germany ready to face kind of a criticism and even maybe limitation of funds, because it's a blatant, so to say, breach of European standards? So it shows that it's a very difficult issue. There are no criteria, and different people assess different states. And therefore, we are very much against of that, because we see it as an instrument, if introduced, as a political instrument to force some states and to maintain the situation of double standards. Nobody thinks about punishing countries like Germany in that case, or France, who repeatedly breaches European law concerning deficit, budgetary deficit. They in the discussion used against the countries like Hungary. I do not agree with the assessment of some experts that there is a threat to rule of law in Hungary. But we observe the discussion and the dynamic of the discussion, for example, relating to the decrees introduced temporarily to find pandemic, not permanent, in Hungary. So for us, Hungary was unjustly criticized. It proved to be in accordance with this international law. Let me think of other countries. I think that it is the position which should be defended not only by all V4, but also all Central European countries. Again, because it is instrument envisaged to punish them, or to use it as a kind of a leverage on them. It is about double standards. So I think that that other countries also would support that position.
Next question from Vladimir Baturin.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hello, Mr. Czaputowicz, thank you very much for your insights on the priorities of the V4 presidency and also on the European cooperation. And this is exactly the area where I would like to ask you to tell us more about the Polish expectations from the conference on the future of the European Union, and whether the Polish V4 presidency has an ambition to reach a joint V4 position for the conference or not. Thank you very much.
The future of the EU.
Not the future of the EU, but the conference on the future of the EU. It's a different issue because the EU is as it is, but the discourse about EU is something different. And let me just refer to make another remark, because also the crisis shown the real European Union, who reacted, where is the real power, where is the trust, to which institutions. So it showed to everybody that nation state is a key political, so to say, body which deals in the situation of crisis. But the discussion of the future of Europe is justified. We should do it. We should simply also take into consideration this experience of the pandemic, and also think how we can gain as a European Union support from the society. So I referred in my introductory presentation to the last year meeting of prime ministers, 13 of them in Warsaw, and the declaration taken at the time, which all presented the vision of the European Union. And we may continue. I think it is a good idea to establish or to just work out another declaration of V4 and maybe get the support of other countries from our region. But it is a very clear vision of the European Union of countries, not as a supranational institution, which has legitimacy and derives that legitimacy from the society, from the citizens, with the role of national parliaments and the role of the council, what I mentioned. Also, the economic activity is very important, and sound economic basis rules are crucial. For freedoms, I mentioned also that. For freedoms, including freedom of services, is crucial because it creates framework for competition. Competition is crucial. And then for development. We contribute to the development of the economic development of the European Union as a V4 countries. Our level of development is much higher than the average of the European Union. Therefore, we contribute to that. In that way, we can say that we contribute to the growing role or important role of the European Union in the world as a model for other regions, other countries. So the normative power is here important, but we should be proud of that. But sometimes we are criticized as the ones who, so to say, save Europe. We save European Union. without our countries, the growth would be negative. Yeah, I mentioned that. Also during pandemic, thanks to the strength of our robustness of our economy, the crisis is milder than in Southern Europe and Western Europe. So it is an advantage. Okay, we give model for others, for the European Union, and we give it for free. We can just invite others, look at us, think about that, and introduce. And it's being done. We introduced first border controls, then some days later, others follow. We introduced quarantine, others follow. But I do not receive many thanks for that. Okay.
There is a Chinese curse saying that, to live in interesting times, and our presidency in V4 coincide with very interesting times. Different parallel processes are going on. EU budget, new migration policy, German presidency in the EU with very high aspirations to lead the whole EU out of the crisis. My question would be, following this Chinese curse, there is a lot of talking, at least on experts level, but I believe also on political level, about decoupling from China, making our European economy dependency and US dependency on Chinese market less influential. So my question would be how we can shape, whether we can shape or how we can do it, our common V4 approach to this debate about the Chinese role for Europe and for the transatlantic relations. Do you have a common ground, at least based on your experience and your interactions with your partners in V4, Minister?
Let me start with the remark that indeed there is a change and understanding within the European Union that our relations with China should be somehow reformulated. That China is a serious challenge, not only a partner, but a challenge for the European Union. And more countries and leaders understand that we should coordinate our policy within the European Union. And also that China may be a threat concerning 5G, concerning, imposing rules, exports, developing exports from China without opening up the market. So it is related to rules. And I observe the understanding which makes this policy or brings this policy closer to the US policy. US, we know, it's more openly criticizing China for Hong Kong recently. Even today, as I read Pompeo's explanation. I think our countries could be here between the US and some EU member states. We are, at least Poland, as far as 5G is concerned, so we are at the beginning of the discussions. We understand arguments presented by the Americans. It should be reliable, safe, so we are ready to cooperate. We signed a declaration with the US on that. And European Union follows that way of thinking. Okay, this is one point. Second point, we have an instrument to deal with China as the regional one. This is a 17+1. All our countries, the 4 countries are there, all Central European countries. It's broader, bigger a bit than a 3Cs initiative because they are Western Balkans, which are not in 3Cs initiative. They are not in the European Union, but they are in the 17+1. Plus, since last year, as I remember, Greece. But now we understand that this instrument cannot be used, must not be used by China to create divisions within the European Union. It was our role. I spoke on that at the Council of the Ministers. So we have to coordinate meeting of 17+1 with the EU-China summit, which was not successful. It happened already. And that summit organized by China, that the European Union as a whole is that the policy is coordinated. It's a new understanding, new approach. So indeed, we coordinate that issue. But on the other hand, there are countries which say, also in our region, or in our region, that we are entitled to have our own channels with China, as the so-called old Europe has. Berlin or Paris deals with China, developing business without consulting with others. Why should we do that? So there is a discussion. I think that there is kind of a rethinking of the situation. But going to the point to your question, this is an area when we differ in V4. We cooperate, we agree on many issues, for example, European Union, but we differ on some international issues, like China. There are countries who are more open for cooperation, unconditional maybe, or less conditional, with China than Poland. I don't want to mention them, you know them, maybe two of them. But Poland is here closer to the US position. But there is also discussions about better coordination of the policy in the in Central Europe. For example, the 17+1 countries. Some countries started to realize that China might use it. So the Chinese, they discuss separately with 17 countries. Our point is, maybe we should coordinate our policy and then have common position and then negotiate with China the declaration. For them, this political input in this declaration is very important. Symbolic role of 17+1 is very important. So this is, we have a position. Poland initiated that meeting with the Chinese. For China, Poland is a leader of that format. The first meeting took part in Warsaw. But now we see coordination also in our missions in Beijing concerning that issue. So it is something which develops in the kind of a maybe new development here. But yes, China is here, is an important issue for our cooperation.
Thank you very much, Minister. About other differences in V4, I will ask later. Now we have Karolina Zbytniewska from the Brussels Euractiv. Karolina, the floor is yours.
Good afternoon, also from Euractiv Poland, and also on board with Think Visegrad. So thank you, Minister, for your speech, for your interesting answers. Especially, I appreciate what you said about working out on the common position on the 17+1. I have two questions. One that will follow up to questions already posed. So I would like again to come back to German presidency. So you mentioned having talked to the German minister and also other bilaterals that are planned. But are you also considering a little more formalized platform of communicating with the German presidency in the EU Council to create a new additional synergies for EU cooperation with V4 countries and for so worked out multilateral leadership in the EU, I mean? Maybe reinforcing this format, so V4 presidency with EU Council presidency is a path worth undertaking, and it is the right momentum also at the moment when we have Poland at the helm of the Visegrad presidency and with Germany at the helm of the EU Council presidency. So are you considering this formalization, or maybe it's worth considering it? The second question, V4 leaders have agreed in their call for the Fair EU Recovery Fund, but it's more or less the whole thing that they have agreed upon, but not on what conditions and for aid that should be handed out. Poland and Slovakia are more reconciliatory, while Andrej Babiš is quite strict about that Prague won't help countries that are not running efficient economic policy, which is not good news for Italy, or that the main criterion should be the GDP slump, which is not good news for Poland. How to reconcile these divergent approaches in your view? So thank you.
We can do easily something in this GDP slump in Poland, but I don't know if it's a good way to that. But yes, you raised important questions. I will think about that, because I did not feel it is, so to say, an expectation to formalize that before plus presidency. I already talked to foreign minister. It will be a meeting of prime ministers. I will pass that message also to consult between prime ministers. Maybe it's an idea to have a meeting before a council between Polish prime minister as a presidency of V4 and chancellor. It might be a good idea. Maybe it could be, particularly if it is of course, the position could be agreed prior to that meeting, also have it in written, a declaration or something on these important issues. It might be maybe a good idea. I remember during the current Czech presidencies, until yesterday, we've been inviting as before a Croatian foreign minister for meetings with Western Balkans, others. Another good idea. Maybe, yes, if we organize something, we can invite also a German counterpart, and continue that issue. As far as the fund is concerned, so now I see that in Brussels, Prime Minister Babiš is perceived as the one who tells the truth. That's okay. I think the leaders, the prime ministers, will discuss that issue. It is something in this argument. But when we discussed in Poland, the position was consulted. There are good arguments saying that, okay, we cannot somehow waste this fund to support inefficient economies. It is a good argument, but Germany decided to go that way. I ask myself the questions and also discuss with that. Why is it so? Why Germany, who was very much for strict and robust rules in governing financial resources in the European Union, agreed on something like that, which does not guarantee the money will be used properly or returned. And after thinking about that, discussing with the others, it is good simply for German economy to somehow encourage imports from Germany to these countries, because exports plummeted in Germany. So when we don't know why a country uses a strategy which looks not consistent with previous strategy of that country, we should look at the interests of that country. Maybe this is an explanation. But okay, we support that. We don't want to create any problems in that issue. Generally, the role of the European Union in economic area should be strong, concerning also the common agricultural policy, cohesion policy, also that recovery policy, recovery funds.
I missed another participant asking for floor. So if I may ask to repeat, Jana Yuzova is asking for floor. So Jana, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. I'm sorry, I had some technical issues with my PC. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for being with us here today and for addressing our questions in this discussion. As you mentioned, there is the tradition of the meeting with the Western Balkan partners, which you plan to hold also under your presidency. And I wanted to ask you, as the Western Balkans and EU integration of the region actually represents one of the priorities of the whole Visegrad Group, whether you could elaborate a little bit more on what your plan is under your presidency and what concrete results or outcomes would you like to achieve during this term? Thank you very much.
Indeed, Western Balkans became an important area of our foreign policy. There are different approaches and different formats. Poland was a chairman of the Berlin process last year, so we invested a lot as far as diplomatic resources are concerned. I visited, I think, in February with the ministers from Baltic states, Tirana and Skopje, to express our support. It is an obligation of the European Union and other countries to support pro-European way and policy in this country, and we expressed that in our visit. So important meeting of the Berlin process will be organized by Bulgaria and Northern Macedonia. So it is a, so to say, important format for that. As far as as far as V4 countries are concerned, all countries support Western Balkans way to join European Union, and we are outspoken in presenting in the documents and the wording of these documents that European Union should be open for accession of these countries to the European Union. And definitely we will continue. We will continue during our presidency. It will be the meeting with the ministers, and we will continue that way.
Let me come back to one of the issues which has a long tradition in V4, however, are not regarded as an easy one. There was a format, a special format in V4 plus Israel. Now our presidency coincidence with Israeli plan to annex Western Bank. I don't want to directly ask on that, but my question would be the following. Do we agree in V4 in basic understanding of international law? Or we have different readings, what that actually does it mean, and how international law principles should be implied in our respective foreign policies?
If you ask these questions to foreign ministers, the answer would be yes, everybody agrees. There is a kind of a sphere area for interpretation of this international law and strategy. Some of these countries, let me maybe start with Polish position. We think that two-state solutions should be implemented, that the Palestinians have a right to their state, that Jerusalem should be a capital, international laws should be obeyed, and that the two parties should start negotiations, Israelis and Palestinians. Recently, I had a call from Palestinian foreign minister, asking also for the support of that position. I expressed our support. And this position is in accordance with the mainstream within the European Union. There are some countries more outspoken defending Palestinian case at the discussion of foreign ministers. However, in V4 there are countries who think that maybe condemning Israel is not a good strategy. It is not about accepting annexation, but simply to give a chance for talks, not to criticize the leadership, Israeli leadership, Netanyahu, look more openly to the proposal of US concerning that plan, peace plan. So it is rather about tactics than substance. Of course, it's very important and rape with consequences case, You can see arguments that it might refer to the, I don't know, behavior of Russia and Crimea if there is an annexation. So we are aware of that, and of course it's true in that. So we'll see what will be the solution. Poland provides also a framework for dealing with the Middle East issue. This is the Warsaw process, which is somehow frozen. But we organized a meeting a year ago in February, a year ago, and a few months in Warsaw with the ministers of Arab states and also Netanyahu, and also Vice President Pence and Mike Pompeo on the Middle East. 7 working groups were set up and they finished their work. We expected a ministerial in Washington on the Middle East, not the Middle East, it's broader, also Iran, other issues, but pandemic disturbed that dynamic. But I already also had discussed with the foreign minister of Israel some time ago, and they are very pleased of the involvement of Poland in the region, particularly referring to our military forces in Lebanon, peacekeeping operations. So there are Poles and Hungarians, soldiers there, more than 200. So we returned to UN peacekeeping operation after 10-year break. So it was a kind of a priority of our government, law and justice government, to be active in that field, because the previous government withdrew our forces in United Nations, saying that now we will defend ourselves. It's not our business. It was a previous strategy of Komorowski's strategy to withdraw from the involvement, to defend our territory. It was wrong. So we changed that policy. So we are involved internationally. So our forces are Lebanon, I mentioned, but also Afghanistan, also Iran, Iraq, in the Balkans, in Kosovo, in Bosnia-Herzegovina, of course, Romania, Latvia. So we have to demonstrate solidarity with other countries if we want other countries would defend us if there is a need to demonstrate solidarity with Poland. So think about that. We are ready to be involved in these negotiations also, if there is an expectation. There are different formats of dealing between Israel and Palestine. Many countries, and European Union has a role, of course, Borrell, but Poland might be also considered, and it's our offer to both sides and to international community.
Thank you very much. Next question from Bratislava, Aliza Muselskis, Globsec. Aliza.
Hello, good afternoon. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister, and thank you, please, for organizing this great debate. I would like to continue on the move of neighborhood, and this time I would like to raise a question about the initiative which is dear to the Polish heart as the Eastern Partnership, which is actually going through a very important period now. As we know, there is a new policy framework of the Eastern Partnership beyond 2020. And there is a roughly coherent approach within V4 on the initiative, on the European ambitions of some of the partners in this initiative. But what we see, the interest in general on the EU level is, I might say, fading. And I think that the fact that the summit will happen next year under the Portuguese presidency is quite telling. So I would like to ask how you see the V4 role, and maybe also alignment with other like-minded countries who would like still to keep this initiative high on agenda, and maybe also what's your view, for example, on the issues like differentiation. If there was initiative from Lithuania on the associated trio. There was also initiatives like adding some security package into this new basket of deliverables. So how do you see the V4 approach to that? Thank you so much.
Well, definitely the role of V4 is seen by the European Union as an important, coherent policy of our countries. We definitely support the involvement of the European Union in these 6 partner countries. Poland is active in proposing, in a discussion. Recently, we had a meeting of ministers with V4, with the Eastern partners. I had a talk with all our ministers on that, on their priorities in order to better understand and argue for closer cooperation. There is, of course, understanding in the European Union. Summit should take place in person as soon as possible with a substantial political declaration. This and also economic, so to say, involvement. We are for institutionalization of that cooperation. We are for legal approximation to create legal frameworks for cooperation with the civic societies. Of course, everybody is aware of differences and different aspirations of these 6 countries. Ukraine is the biggest one, advanced, ambitious one, and rightly so. There are other countries with different aspirations. Belarus is another issue, Moldova, and other countries. So we have to have a flexible approach to these countries. But what they expect that we can provide it easily, also political support, substantial declarations, meeting of leaders with leaders, that pro-European forces in these countries feel they have support. And of course, they must fulfill criteria. And they should be supported, and definitely we will continue that cooperation. And V4 has here the role. We discussed when to organize that meeting. There are many meetings of with the Eastern partners recently. So definitely it will be an important meeting of foreign ministers to discuss their position. We should mention that also because the relations in the European Union towards Eastern partners, sometimes it's a function of the relations with Russia. Russia has some aspirations concerning these countries, might treat EU involvement as kind of a threat to their interests. So, and they expect these countries firm position on Russia, concerning Ukraine, for example. Will it be able to maintain that firm position and create an alliance also in broader, so to say, framework with the Americans, for example, with the Brits after Brexit, clear position and clear signals to Russia that we expect the international law be obeyed and respected by Russia, that Normandy format be somehow realized what was agreed. So the role for V4 is to remind that. I visited recently twice after pandemic already Baltic states, Tallinn and Vilnius. These are countries very outspoken and with the vital interest in the region, and they feel very well the threat Russia creates. They are advocates with Poland and also V4 countries. We are very pleased of that, and we will continue that cooperation and exchange of opinions.
We have 10 minutes to go. I believe we have room for 3 additional questions. Zuzanna Podracka, first of these last 3.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much, Mr. Minister, for this very detailed overview of the V4 and the priorities, and to PISM for organizing this as well. I want to follow up on something that you already briefly mentioned twice, which is Brexit and the relations with the UK, following the transition period. And on the one hand, I know you mentioned that, the V4 is in agreement in supporting the EU's position, but given that, for this region, the future relations with the UK are quite important, and we know that Poland already has some bilateral agreements with the UK. I just wanted to ask how you see the future of taking a stance towards the UK. I mean, obviously it depends on the UK as well, but do you foresee a way in which the V4 will sort of firmly stand behind EU's approach and advocate for a common approach of EU as a bloc? Or do you think that because of the importance of the UK to this region, we might see more agreements on a bilateral basis between the V4 as a bloc, between the V4 countries and the UK following the transition period. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
As far as negotiations are concerned, we are together with the European Union. We support common position. We support negotiator Barnier. It will not change because we are a member of the European Union. It is in our interests to get to have a good agreement with the UK. It's one thing. We'll see what will be the result, but everybody observes the development. If there is a, so to say, hard Brexit, it will be not a good option for the European Union, for Poland and for the UK. We argued for flexibility a year ago, 2 years ago. We will be more flexible on the backstop. We were not successful. I'm talking about our position, even my positions that presented openly. So we'll see what will be the final results of these negotiations. We hope a deal will be struck. First point. Second point, what to do with what kind of relations should we have with the UK after Brexit? Of course, for us, British involvement in Central European is very important. It is a very important country in terms of military strength, nuclear power, membership in NATO, but also symbolic power, also membership in the Security Council as a permanent member. So in the Security Council, the power of European power will drop by half after leaving UK. So we have to understand that. So we want, and we are interested in maintaining their interest in Central Europe, and they are indeed interested in their region. Also, policy towards Russia is of crucial interest to US. We are very close. We share the position on many international issues. We are closer to UK on Russia, for example, than to France. So we have to establish good relations. Poland built a good institutional framework, yearly consultations, governmental consultations, Belvedere Forum for Civic Societies, Quadriga, which is the meeting of foreign and defense ministers, regular meetings. I think that it will enable us to maintain good contacts. Also, it's important that Polish society is large, more than 1 million Polish citizens in UK, and we want to maintain good relations with this also due to that reason. Recently, we signed an agreement with the UK giving a right both to Polish citizens in UK and British citizens in Poland to take part in local elections. I think that other V4 countries have similar approach. Maybe it would be a good occasion and good reason for having a meeting of foreign minister V4s plus UK at certain stage, also during our presidency, to consult foreign policies, because we should support each other after the Brexit as far as international relations are concerned. Some argue that we might be also competitors in economic field. Yes, I agree. So we have to negotiate good agreement.
And there's a last question. Before, that's as a moderator, my privilege to say the last question during this meeting. So that's about migration policy, which the German presidency is planning to reform, or at least to launch negotiations how we can recalibrate European migration reform. V4 managed to be very outspoken 5 years ago on the similar issues. Now, new wave of migrants are coming to Europe. It also will have an impact on our presidency in V4. Do we have a common V4 view how this European migration policy should look like in the future? What we are able to support, taking into account our principal position 5 years ago?
Indeed, our position was similar and well heard in the European Union 5 years ago, and it was also, I think, also a kind of an engine of our restarting cooperation at that time. We are pleased that other countries followed us and shared our arguments concerning the migration. So for the moment, probably, I don't know if it's 100% over, but this compulsory quota system, which was proposed by the European Union, is rejected. And also our arguments that we should concentrate on two issues. First, protecting the border, and the second, to support the societies on the spot in these countries, gained kind of an acceptance. With the limitation of crossing borders, I do not see a danger of increase of or new ways of migration, with one exception. Turkey and the ones who are in Turkey, which was already demonstrated by Turkey, could create a problem. So we have to also maintain good relations and cooperate with Turkey on that issue. But it was maybe a cornerstone of our common policy, the similar position of V4 again, then supported by other countries.
Thank you very much, Minister. On behalf of the whole consortium of Think Visegrad, on behalf of all supporters, watchers of V4 cooperation, I would like to express our gratitude for your time that you are devoted to be with us today. I would like to also thank all our partners, again, YouTube watchers, experts supporting V4 initiative and V4 format on various occasions in various ways. Thank you very much for being with us. We have to stop here, as it is the first day of our presidency. We cannot exhaust our Polish foreign minister already the first day. And I hope we would be able to organize similar meetings, maybe in the end of the Polish V4 presidency, to sum up how it went. So be in touch with us. Thank you very much for your presence. And I hope we see each other in more favorable conditions after COVID crisis. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Director, for having me.